Good afternoon, everybody. It is currently 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time here in Jacksonville, Florida on this July 3rd. Happy day before the 4th of July, 2021. And here we are back again with another update on the tropical system called Elsa. Just real quick, I want to point out, if you'll notice above, we are still in a yellow awareness mode, not a low threat, right? This system should still bear some warning, but we're also not at a high threat either that, say, a higher strength tropical system would bring. Now, also, there's still a lot of unknowns. This video probably will be a little bit shorter than the other ones. I don't have as much to cover. I can only say, the same amount of things a certain amount of times before I start boring you guys, and not a lot really has changed in some aspects, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. So let's jump right into this. If you recall yesterday, I was surprised that Elsa had become a hurricane based on some of the factors that it was dealing with coming across the Caribbean into the Lesser Antilles back over here. As you can see, Elsa is now sitting south of the Dominican Republic, and if you'll note, it is now a tropical storm. Yes, Elsa has weakened ever so slightly. It was an 85-mile-per-hour hurricane yesterday. It is now down to a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and I expect some of that weakening to continue for the time being. Multiple factors that I'll get into in this video. If you'll notice, the central pressure has risen. Remember, higher pressure, weaker storm, lower pressure, stronger storm. The pressure has risen to 999 millibars. If you'll recall, typically the air outside you feel sits somewhere around 1,013 millibars. This is below that, hence why most weather-making systems are called lower pressures, because with those lower pressures causes storms. Now, Elsa is still moving west-northwest very, very rapidly at 29 miles per hour. And believe it or not, it actually has slowed down a little bit. This morning, it was moving at 31 miles an hour, which, again, for a tropical system is unheard of. And actually, that rapid speed that it's moving at is actually hindering the system some. I want to come over to the satellite imagery real quick here. And as this loads, you'll see as we get into the daytime, this page might be a little laggy. There's a lot of people trying to access it at the moment. But this is Elsa, and as you can see, it's not what you typically see out of a tropical system, right? It's kind of disorganized and not really the greatest looking system. You're getting some rain bands out here in Puerto Rico, some outer bands that are just under the influence of the system, lagging behind a little bit. There we go. Now we're getting full speed. But you'll see this cluster of thunderstorms here in the center. That is where the strongest winds and Elsa should be in the system. I believe the hurricane hunters have confirmed that. They're seeing winds 60 to 70 miles per hour in there, so the storm might be a little bit weaker than the 70 miles per hour it's listed at. But nonetheless, what I want you to notice is, as this sort of loops, watch right ahead of this cluster. You see this spin, almost like a top, right under my cursor, right to the top left of this thunderstorm complex. And that is actually the center of Elsa. And the center, again, is moving at 29 miles per hour now. And as I mentioned yesterday, hurricanes like to be a very straight, narrow. They like to be very straight up in their structure. It helps with their ventilation, if you can think of it that way. These clouds that kind of spiral out away from the storm, that's cold air being ejected out from the storm, sort of maintaining its ability to ingest the warmer air from the waters below and stay churning. However, with the speed that the lower part of the storm is moving at is actually faster than the speed that the upper part of the storm. These storms go 50, 60,000 feet into the air, and so the winds are not the same at the surface as they are aloft. They can be going different speeds, different directions, whatever. A lot of that helps cause our weather, and some wind shear is actually beneficial. And really, there's not a lot of ambient wind shear in the area at the moment. There is some drier air. You can see there's not a lot of clouds out here. Some drier air out ahead of the system. However, wind shear wise, there's not a lot affecting the storm. However, Elsa is creating its own wind shear by having the bottom half of the storm, essentially, these low-level spin right out ahead of this complex. You can see it spinning down there, moving faster than the upper levels, which you can see lagging behind back here. And what that does is it tilts the system and kind of throws some things out of whack, which is why Elsa is not strengthening but actually weakening at this point in time. Also, it's getting a tiny bit of land interaction off to the north. That also could have an impact, and it will especially have an impact as it moves into Cuba. Now, I want to jump back to the track of this storm and show what may or may not have changed. If we come over to the cone, I know everyone loves the cone. Elsa, 11 a.m. Saturday, is sitting right here. And at 8 a.m. Wednesday, you see it's projected to be somewhere around Jacksonville's latitude. However, you'll note that it could be on the east side of the state. It could be all the way out to the west. It could be outside of this cone. Excuse me, let me take a drink of water. There's really not a whole lot of consensus in the models on exactly where this storm is going to end up going. Now, you'll see a lot of these colors out here. There is a hurricane watch in effect for the southeastern part of Cuba. That was issued yesterday when Elsa was still a hurricane. The blue on top of it is a tropical storm warning. That is really the main threat, is a tropical storm warning. You see down here, you got some hurricane warnings here because Elsa was recently a hurricane, not still a hurricane. I mentioned that earlier. It is now a tropical storm. Now, what's expected of this system is in the coming days, as you see the time periods here, 11 a.m. Saturday, 8 by tomorrow morning, it could be over Cuba, just off the coast of Cuba. And from there, based on the land interaction, remember, when you're over open waters, there's less friction, so you can move faster, the winds can move faster. Once you get over land, you're getting some friction, things slow down, the storm itself slows down and kind of throws on the brakes a little bit. And that slows down the time period. If you remember early on, we were looking at a storm that would be here Monday night into Tuesday. Now we're looking, you could start feeling some outer impacts Tuesday, Wednesday. It's kind of even, Wednesday morning, excuse me, it's kind of even with us. By 8 a.m. Thursday, it looks to be out of here off to the north. Hopefully taking more of this track and recurving back out into the ocean where it doesn't affect anyone. But even if it does get up here, it's probably going to be a pretty weak system. It could dump some rain, but other than that, not a whole lot of wind with it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of spread in what the models are showing. And I want to jump over to the GFS really quickly. This model has kind of been showing a stronger system, kind of coming up here, curving off here, and I want to show you what it's doing now. Go forward in time. You'll see Elsa sort of this green batch of wind here. Actually, I'll jump over to the radar view. It's easier for me to sort of show some aspects here. As you move forward in time, this is Elsa down here. I know it doesn't look nearly as impressive as it did yesterday or the day before. This is now because the models are starting to take Elsa more over the Cuban mainland, where in the southeastern part of Cuba, there's a lot of higher peaks. And as I mentioned yesterday, those mountain ranges disrupt hurricanes significantly and disrupt their circulation and basically rips the systems apart. And so you'll see that even on here, you would have the L here for the center of the system. It weakens so much that it's almost barely not a system anymore. Until it moves back over the water, you see the main part of Elsa right here just drifting off to the northwest actually. Right here, it's just offshore, so it could re-strengthen a tiny bit at that point. But once it goes back over the ocean again, that's when it will really, really re-strengthen. And you'll see that. You see this circle here of lower pressure starting to reform after it leaves the Cuban land area. As it moves to the north, you see that band of heavier rain kind of move into the Tampa area. The pressures start to drop again. 1,004. They're a weaker, probably tropical storm. Although I will say, this system has a penchant for strengthening quickly. The pressures were in the thousands the first time it was made a hurricane, although the official pressure was listed at, I believe, 955 millibars. Some of the other pressure readings were in the thousands, so things can get a little squirrely with that. But you see it moves up the coast and again takes a path into the Big Bend, starts to weaken as it moves over land more, and eventually moves just to the east of Tallahassee, actually, over I-10 into Georgia, before ultimately moving across the state and ultimately dying out, moving into the mid-Atlantic, and really joining up with a frontal system and just kind of becoming a big rainmaker for the Northeast. Now, the European model, which has been trending weaker over this entire storm's life cycle, it's never been entirely high on the strength of this system. And if we move forward in time, you'll see it paints a very similar picture now to what the GFS is showing. This is Elsa. I know this is a different view, harder to see. Again, this is looking at pressure, wind, and how much spin is in the air. And so the darker the reds, the more spin there is. So sitting down here is Elsa. You see it moving over Cuba, off to the northwest before making an easterly turn, very similar to what the GFS was showing, up into the Big Bend. This shows maybe a slightly stronger system. It's kind of hard to tell because the values aren't really listed there. This is looking up a bit in the atmosphere, but maybe slightly stronger, although not. We're expecting tropical storm strength no matter what from here on out based on what everything's looking at. Again, it kind of moves, except this takes more of an easterly turn, more towards Jacksonville in a way Irma kind of moved in that general vicinity, and then up the coast as it recurves off. Really looks like it moves through all the Carolinas, off the Virginia coast, and then curves back out into the Atlantic. Now, I do want to show something else here. And this is, again, microwave imagery, which shows us sort of how high the clouds are. And, excuse me, my throat's a little dry today, folks. And really lets us see where the strongest parts of the storm are. This is looking at the last 24 hours of Elsa. You see these stronger bands out away. But if you look here in the center, that's the low level rotation. This is another example of what I was talking about with the low levels outracing the upper levels. All the strongest storm activity is lagging back behind that low level spin. But if you look at the effect that this is having on the storm, watch how these reds sort of fade away and they're not as bright, I would say, right? They're not as dark. The cloud tops aren't getting as high, and there's less significant convection, which is just storms sitting around Elsa. Now, again, this does not mean that it cannot re-strengthen. It is not forecast to re-strengthen at this point. However, given the uncertainty in the models, there's still a very wide spread. Again, if I come back to the cone here, a few of the models have it coming up through here, curving across the state, and by the time it's at Jacksonville's sort of north-south latitude, it's over here. It could be off the East Coast, could be over here. I've seen one that takes it up over here. I've seen one that takes it on the path the GFS and Euro were taking. I've seen one that kind of curves it across the state and then kind of does a weird squirrely thing. There's just too much uncertainty at this point to really nail down where it's going. And so, really, just focus on this cone for now. This is where it's most likely going to be. Cannot confirm past the next few hours because things can change. A weaker system, if it takes a more northerly track and gets absolutely obliterated by the mountains sitting down here, a weaker system is going to be more affected by that. Remember, we talked about this high pressure that's sitting out here, and it has winds sort of coming this direction, right, from the east to the west, and that's blowing the storm in this direction. Now, A weaker system is going to be under more of an influence from that high, right? It can't fend itself as well. If it's weaker, it's not going to have the oomph behind it to fight back against that. So it's going to be driven more to the west. A stronger system, however, if it skirts past the coast here, stays over water, takes a more westerly initial approach, right? Avoids a lot of the Cuban coast, kind of comes up this way, it could still be a stronger system, a stronger 55, 60 mile per hour tropical storm, most likely. But that's going to allow it to take more of an easterly track up through here, right? And so there's a lot of unknowns about where this thing is going to ultimately end up because of that. Again, this is why we are under a yellow, not a green, because even though this system probably won't be very powerful, once it gets to the Jacksonville area, there's still too much unknown to say that with any degree of certainty. Again, even if this system is weaker, there could still be some minor storm surge, probably 1 to 3 feet at the coast. I'm not entirely sure how far back that pushes it. I know the street, if you think about St. Augustine and Jax Beach, those first streets are very prone to flooding with any tropical system that comes through Jacksonville, although it should be much more minor than it was in the past. Winds, not looking at a whole lot of wind damage. Again, you could have some power outages. If you're getting constant straight line winds in excess of 39 miles per hour, if it's a weaker system, upwards of 60, 70. If it's a stronger system, yeah, that's going to knock over some trees, could do some damage, but power outages are a possibility. A lot of rainfall, although given the speed of this system, the rainfall shouldn't be too prevalent, maybe 1 to 3 inches there as well. However, that all depends on the exact track of the system. And again, if it goes more this track, again, that puts Jacksonville in the northeast quadrant, which is more likely to spawn quick spin-up tornadoes, which can do damage and spin up with little to no warning. So with that, again, I know I said this video is going to be a little bit shorter. It's actually about the same length, surprisingly. I feel like I haven't really said that much, but it's about the same length as the other ones. Might come out with another video tonight, depending on how the storm evolves after it moves across the coast. Tomorrow morning is going to be key to seeing what the future track of this storm looks like, right? By 10 o'clock Sunday, based on this, because by 8 a.m. Sunday it's here, if it takes this track, by 10 o'clock Sunday morning, we should know if it's going to be a weaker system once it gets out here or a stronger one. That will allow us to adjust the track more to the east or more to the west. So 10 o'clock tomorrow morning is my key to look at where's the storm at, what's its strength, what's it's going over. And from there, we can start to create a more accurate picture of hopefully knowing where this thing is going to go. So with that, just to wrap this up, remember, had some preparations in place just in case. Have some water in case you lose power, portable chargers, things of that nature. This thing won't be that impactful. We've seen tropical systems before, gone through them. I know some people have flooding and whatever. Yes, those will happen with this system. Don't think that they won't. They will. But it's not going to be catastrophic damage. Not going to be like anything what Irma brought us. Not going to be like Hurricane Matthew. Just mostly a rainmaker at this point that should be out of here by early Thursday morning. Again, some outer bands could start coming in Tuesday. Wednesday is really the day that we're going to be under the gun for most of the part. Really, actually, I say that. But 8 a.m. Wednesday, it's even with us. So midday Wednesday, we should start, our conditions should start improving rapidly. Because what's going to happen is as this system moves off, it's going to keep taking in moist air from the Atlantic. But it's already gone over this area. So this area is going to be a little bit more worked over. It's not going to be able to draw as much energy. So all of the wind and rain is going to be locked in this sort of area of the system while this backside is drier. Hence why midday should start to see our conditions improve even if the system isn't that far away. Now with that, again, I will keep posting video updates, text updates when needed on my page, on my Twitter, anywhere else. But other than that, guys, I will talk to you all later.